Hey everyone, a quick warning up front. This episode will contain some disturbing footage from one of YouTube's most prolific dedicated China hate channels. That's going to show up closer towards the end of my video here. Now, in regards to these China hate channels, my image has appeared several times on the YouTube channels belonging to Laowhy86, aka Matthew Tye, and SerpentZA, Winston Sterzel. They also run a channel together called ADV China and ADV Podcasts. Because of that, I get a trickle of people, their supporters, who come over from their channel from time to time to call me various names, and sometimes they'll check out some of my content. Now, I have a number of videos exposing the specific lies and problematic racist remarks that this duo makes, but what has now been uncovered is far beyond anyone's wildest imagination. For Matt and Winston's followers, especially those of you who contribute financially to them, this is going to be really important for you to see. Now, before I get into the meat of things, I want everyone to recognize a very important distinction. When my image, or the image of other people who have positive things to say about China from time to time, shows up in their videos, they don't ever really address the things we say or any of our core points or arguments. They create a commentary over top of our images, which is so disconnected from anything that makes sense or even has any relevance to what we were saying in the clips they use of us that they've muted. When we talk about their channels, however, we let their words and their actions speak for themselves, and that's exactly what I'm going to do here today. They can't address our arguments head on, and this is why they not only use our images in such a superficial manner, but it's also why on every single occasion they've been invited by the very people they talk about or criticize on Twitter to have a live discussion, they always back away and find an excuse. Now, this leads me to believe that they know they can't actually support the things that they say. They know how ridiculous it is, but not only do they get away with it, it's popular. Winston has nearly 1 million subscribers. Matt, nearly 800,000. What they're saying gets clicks. And at the end of this video, when I share that disturbing footage I've mentioned, you will understand exactly the lengths that they're willing to go to in search for that content that will get them those clicks. Now, I have already covered the racist and dehumanizing nature of their content before, and I don't want to repeat myself too much here. But since I just mentioned that they make excuses to avoid having their ideas challenged live, I will share one of the more entertaining examples and excuses that one of them used, which also happens to highlight their racist nature. So Winston had told ZA, a Chinese-born American citizen, that he could learn from Winston's videos because he's not indoctrinated like he is, which is why Winston apparently knows more about China than him. Carl, the guy who runs Silk and Steel podcast, an absolute walking encyclopedia on Chinese history. It's a great podcast. You should definitely check it out. But Carl, anyways, calmly responded by inviting him onto his podcast, to which Winston responded with a full-on racist remark, saying that Carl, as a Han Chinese, even though also was born in China, is incapable of understanding the country he was born in, as well as a foreigner like him. Carl, who, by the way, went to high school in the U.S., is somehow limited by culture, education, nationalism, and traditions just because he's Han Chinese. He will never understand China as well as Winston because he is Han Chinese. I mean, this is a pretty full mask-off moment, if I've ever seen one, which Winston indeed has many of. These kinds of twists and turns that Winston and Matt make to avoid taking accountability or in order to force a specific agenda or story or narrative, no matter how ridiculous their logic ends up looking, is something that they actually regularly engage in. And in the interest of briefly illustrating this point, I want to share a part of Winston's most recent video, which he also used my image in. So in this video, he and Laowhy86 corner an ethnic minority girl, she looks like she's about 8 years old or something like that, standing alone in a village, and begin filming her from two angles, two sides. They have her surrounded. And he then uses this footage to both prove that ethnic minorities in China are unhappy and as evidence of one of his many so-called meaningful conversations with ethnic minorities in China, which is why he understands them so well. This little girl becomes visibly distressed, even looking over to a local man in the distance for help as Winston awkwardly smiles at her while trying to get her attention by disingenuously calling her clothing good-looking and pretty. And I say disingenuous because you will hear that afterwards in his commentary he calls her ethnic cultural clothing stupid. And this is something he's done for ethnic minority groups elsewhere also, making fun of Maori people in New Zealand and all kinds of stuff like that. So it's not out of character for him even outside of the China discussion. But when you watch this video, I think I need to stress here, because it is so ridiculous, that I did not edit this footage in. I did not add this footage in. This is really the footage that he used to prove that he had meaningful conversations with ethnic minorities in China. And when she became creeped out by him and Matt, he blamed the Chinese government.
We've had terrible things happening to all the minorities around China, many of whom I've met personally and spoken to myself.
你会说普通话吗？会啊，你好。哎，喂，你叫什么名字？我叫温斯顿。你的衣服好看，好漂亮。
So I'm speaking from first-hand knowledge here. They are not happy. Of course they're going to be happy when the cameras are in town and when the tourist people or the compromised influencers or whoever else are coming there to do a thing, because they have to be. And if they don't toe the party line, wear their stupid headdress, put on a smile and dance, they're going to be in trouble and it's going to destroy their entire life. They're just trying to survive, people. So besides the big ones that everybody knows about that have been talked about in the news, what about the average citizen of China? You know, that's the thing. The normal, everyday person.
Well, while that video was really, I don't know, I got kind of anxious watching her, and I felt really bad for her. But as disturbing as that was, this was not the really disturbing footage I mentioned at the beginning of the video that I said I would eventually get to. And I will eventually get to that. But regarding the video that you did just see, the one that I just showed you, Winston cornered this little girl for his entertainment purposes and for his YouTube channel. He paid no attention to her body language that was clearly indicating she was uncomfortable being surrounded and filmed by Matt and him, and he expected that she was there to dance and perform for them, because that's exactly what he said they're supposed to do, or that they're expected to do. He said that they have to toe the party line and dance when the cameras were rolling, or else they'd get in trouble. But that's not what this showed us, did it? I mean, it completely contradicted what he said. And he exploited this little girl only to later mock her cultural clothing and to use her to push a point of view and a narrative that wasn't even supported by the interaction that he supplied here. There are actually far more concerning examples of Matt and Winston exploiting children in China for their videos. They have really weird B-roll footage that they use. They set up cameras behind girls in restaurants filming them eating, or even actually here in my city of Shenzhen, they'd set up their cameras outside of middle schools in Shekou district, just down the road from here, from where I am, to capture young schoolgirls without their permission in order to eventually use them as B-roll for a video where they talk about childhood sexuality. I mean, if I was one of the parents, first of all, if I saw these two guys filming my kids outside of their school, I would probably ask them what they're doing, and if I eventually found out that this is what they were using them for, I'd be pretty upset. I will provide a link in the description so that you can see that clip for yourself. But for now, let's move on to the really disturbing footage that involves Matthew Tye more specifically. For a long time, I was fairly certain that Matt would be willing to do almost anything to get views. I mean, he's already been caught fabricating and altering Douyin videos to build a narrative, and he was caught red-handed making up an escape from China story. I will pop a link in the description to those examples as well. But what has been uncovered now is something beyond what I could have ever imagined even someone like Matt would do in order to grow his YouTube channel. I think I've got to first describe to you guys what you're about to see so that you can decide for yourself whether you'd like to continue watching or not, because it's fairly disturbing and upsetting. So, 8 years ago, Matt came across unmarked graves in Taiwan. And he acknowledges in the video that he already suspected that these were indeed unmarked graves. When his wife realizes what they've come across, she breaks down, begins sobbing, and begs Matt to leave them alone. Matt doesn't comply. He doesn't even comfort her. On the contrary, he yells at her to be quiet, saying this is going to be great for his vlog. And then he begins to pick at them with sticks and pull them out of the ground, flicking them around. And eventually his wife can't take anymore and walks off, bawling her eyes out, while he keeps saying, oh, this is really cool. With that warning out of the way, here is the video.
We just were walking along here, and we found this, which appears to be a bone, pelvis. I'm just uncovering this now. Another bone. Quite possibly a skull. We're gonna uncover the rest on video for you. Shh.
Another one. That's a human.
That definitely looks human to me.
Man, can we go?
Hold on.
No. Don't take the stupid shit.
Don't talk. This is good stuff. This is good for my vlog. Lots of bones. Oh man, come here, come here. Come close. Come here, close. Come here. It appears that we have just... Here, I'll take it. Here's Vivi. It appears that we just found a dead human. Yeah, that's a real person. Those are real teeth. This is very, very cool. Proof that I'm here. This is Matt here with the bones. We found these. My idea is that it's a very old grave that got kind of dug up. My lovely assistant is very distraught. She's been crying the entire time. I think this is fascinating. That's a full human skull. Yeah, that can't be too old.
I need not expend any further words to convince you that this is a sick and twisted individual who will do anything for views. It goes beyond lying. He's literally willing to dig up human remains from unmarked Taiwanese graves if he thinks it will get clicks and grow his YouTube channel. And then in the next video, he'll talk about how much he loves Taiwan and the Chinese people. I mean, if you're willing to support these guys, you're willing to believe their firsthand accounts that they talk about their time in China, these are the people you want to trust, and some of you don't even mind putting your names under their Patreon subscribers. I mean, I have nothing left I can really say to you guys specifically. I mean, even if Matt had eventually come to terms with the fact that he made a mistake and he reflected on what he did, he'd still be a sick individual for ever thinking that this was a good idea. And for not showing concern for his wife's emotional state, telling her to be quiet and continuing to dig up human remains for his YouTube channel. But how much worse would it be if he never did end up reflecting on it? Or when he finally confirmed that these were indeed unmarked graves, he didn't feel shocked, saddened, or sickened by what he did to someone in their final resting place. Now, before I drive this next point home, I want to make kind of a sub point. You know, I want to remind you, some of you may know from my previous content, that Matthew Tye and Winston Sterzel have always had great disdain towards poor people. Matt even painted it as a negative when explaining that China listens to the demands and frustrations of poor people, calling it a dystopian future straight out of a Chairman Mao playbook. I will put the link in the description to that clip, but the point I want to make is Matt's hate and disrespect for poor people is almost as bad as his hate for China. I mean, it doesn't even matter if they're Chinese or not anymore. He will universally hate on poor people, and I'll illustrate that with a short clip.
Look at these gangbanger homeless people.
Yeah.
What you doing? Fucking MS-13 tattoos.
Drugged
out meth heads.
Looks like they're getting ready to lounge in the sun.
Why? It's hot. They got some cardboard to sleep on. That's nice. Keeps you away from the snakes.
Yeah, I guess so.
Like, we saw a weird homeless dude today, right?
We saw a couple.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this weird Mexican homeless dude is laying there.
Also, when they want to go their luxury shopping, they go to the downtown place that's, you know, frequented by the same people that, you know, there maybe those people aren't, the poor people aren't shopping there, but they're still there.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Whereas here, you're literally surrounded by the rich and famous, and it's very clean.
Beautiful scenery,
right.
You know, amazing,
good security systems.
Yeah, everything is great.
All right, with that context in mind, and back to the point of reflection, 2 years after filming that video, a full 2 years to think about what he did, he acknowledged that back then he was indeed told and informed that they were unmarked graves that he was digging up. They were the remains of someone's family. So someone buried them there. What was his response? Was he shocked? Was he disgusted? Was he remorseful? Even 2 years later? No, he wasn't. Because when he was told they were unmarked graves, he was also told they were poor locals. 2 years after he shot this video, 2 years after having time to think about what he did, he posts a follow-up comment in response to somebody asking a new question and says, "Turns out it was just an old burial site from ages ago for poor people who lived near the beach. Nothing special, just creepy." What is there left to say? What is there left to say after this? He didn't feel any remorse. He didn't feel that these remains deserved any respect. These graves were not special, as he says, because they were just poor Taiwanese people. This guy is absolute trash. And the only thing protecting him is that he's on board this hate train against China that so many institutions and Western mainstream media outlets are also on board for. And as a matter of fact, some of you may remember, because I did a video on this topic. There were two BBC journalists, Carrie Allen and Sophie Williams, and they did a hit piece on these so-called pro-China YouTubers, speculating about their behavior and digging through all kinds of hypotheticals to paint these guys in a negative light. Well, they not only know about Winston and Matt, but they also follow them. They interact with them. But now that they're faced with not hypotheticals, with not assumptions and best guesses, but with footage, with hard footage of someone on their side of the narrative literally digging up the remains of people from unmarked graves, do you think they'll write a piece about this? No, of course not. I mean, some mainstream media may pick this story up if it's shared enough and enough people are outraged by what he did. But this video was up for 8 years without any consequences to this guy. And these BBC reporters who follow them and have seen their bigoted content, despite what, you know, BBC journalists like these two want you to believe, they don't actually give a shit about Chinese people. Even if there had been an unconfirmed story about just the possibility of the Chinese government building over some graves somewhere, it would be front page or at least near front page news for an outlet like the BBC. But actual hard footage of a fellow China hater digging up and flicking around human remains from unmarked graves, meh, no big deal. I mean, I hope to be proven wrong, but I suspect I won't be. Now from here, you know, I never ask you guys to, some of you may know, I never ask you to like, subscribe, and share my videos. And I'll still not ask you to subscribe, but I will ask you to like and reshare either this video, the shorter version from my Twitter, I'll put a link in the description, or the archived video from Matt's channel, which was finally, just before I started filming this video, shortly before I started filming this video, after 8 years... Suddenly, after his video came to the attention of people who understand right and wrong better than his core subscriber base does, he finally removes it. Very quietly, without saying anything. I will provide you with a link to the archived copy of this video so that you can not only share it, as I mentioned, if you need to, but that you can see firsthand that this was absolutely real. This was on his channel. This really happened. And I just really think he shouldn't be able to just slither away from this. He needs to answer to the people of Taiwan for this. And people need to understand how disingenuous, dangerous, and sick this individual is, because it really helps you understand what drives the rest of his content and how honest it is, or not in this case, of course. So as I said, I think I'm going to wrap it up here. I don't want to drag this video on. I will put the links in the description, the sources and references, and you guys can check it out for yourself. And as I said, that's going to be it from me. So I will see you in the next video. I hope you guys are fine after seeing all that stuff. Peace.